Shalom, shalom. My name is YAH with Savior Word of Yah, Tabernacles of the Congregation of Yisrael. Welcome to our weekly Bible study, O Thy Kingdom Come. The topic for this week is Purim. We're going to talk about Purim. What is Purim? You've heard about it. Many new Hebrews have heard and may not know, what it is pertaining to a holy day or a holiday. Some of us that's been in it a little bit longer, a little bit more familiar with it, but with most holy days, we just know that these are things that we celebrate. We don't really understand what was the history, what is the significance, or is this even Torah? Is this even law? So we're going to get into it. We're going to look at the history of Purim, see what it means, and get an understanding of when is Purim. So you can always go to our website at saviorwordofyah.org, and you can click on the holy days and you can see our calendar where you can see the dates that are coming up. You have the 12th month started on February the 11th. So that means New Year's is coming up. So Rosh Hashanah, or head of the year, New Year's, will be the evening of March 14th. Of course, that brings you into your Pesach, your Passover, which would be March 27th, starting at nightfall. So, people are wondering, hey, why are our dates different than the so-called Jewish dates? Well, again, if you followed any of our classes, we don't follow the new moon. We follow the new month. We look at ancient records of how the month was calculated. Only in English is moon and month a correlation. In every other language is a completely different word for moon and a completely different word for month. And that includes Greek and Hebrew. So we have classes on that and how to determine when the month starts, as well as the holy days. So what we're going to talk about is Purim. Purim, according to the Enochian calendar, would be Friday, February 24th, and Saturday, February 25th. It's like a 2-day feast, the days of Purim. So that would be Friday, February 24th at sundown. That would be this Friday, starting Shabbat, and then ending Shabbat, going into the first day, Saturday, February 25th. So how do we calculate those days? What does it mean? Where does it come from? Is it just a tradition? Is it law? Let's get into it. Let's take a look at that. And why this is also very important is right now what we got going on, we have a battle of culture. We have the American culture, the Babylonian culture, the corporate culture, which is geared towards self, to purchasing things versus giving away things. It's to make the rich richer and the poor poorer. It's a very pagan focus. And that's the culture. The culture now is be about yourself, spend money, consume, materialism. That is the culture of today's time, very demonic. They do it out in the open. Well, the Hebrew culture is the opposite. Even our holy days is not about us. Our holy days is about Yah and his salvation plan, his word, versus their holidays. You have a lot of depression, people wanting to kill themselves because they don't have money, or they don't have a wife or a husband, or whatever the case may be, versus Yah's holy days. It's more of a focus on Yah and his salvation plan and his nation, and less on you as an individual. So there's a battle of culture, and they're trying to erase our culture with a group called ADL, which will go out and create all these terms that make telling the truth some kind of racism. But at the end of the day, all we are doing is stating the truth and reading what's in this word. So there's a battle against culture. So hold on to your culture. You don't have to assimilate. You don't have to be like the world. Obviously, you have to be amongst the world, and you want to find your brothers and sisters that are in the world and help convert them over or help show them the light. But at the end of the day, you have to retain your own culture. We're moving away from that confusion and back to an ancient culture. So Purim is one of our ancient traditions. It was more like a national memorial holiday, and we're going to get into it, and we're going to see what it's all about. So we're going to go to the book of Esther, and even the name Esther is pagan. That comes from Astaroth or Yester. Her name was Hadassah, but every captivity we go to, they take our Hebrew names, which gives glory to Yah, which has a meaning, and it's changed into some kind of pagan name. So even this book, which is called Esther, that's a pagan name. Her name was Hadassah. So we're going to the book of Esther, chapter 3, Hadassah, chapter 3. And let's pull up the scripts. And we're going to see where Purim came from. All right, so we're going to go to the book of Esther, chapter 3, and we're going to start this at verse 1. After these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. So Ahasuerus is in history Xerxes. So when you watch the 300 or whatever, and they show you Xerxes or whatever, that's Ahasuerus. He's the Persian king. So he's promoting Haman, which is an Edomite, over the realm, over where Esther is, Hadassah. Verse 2, and all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did he him reverence. So Mordecai, which is an Israelite, his brother not bowing down. We don't bow down to men. Now we'll give you respect, but we not bowing down like we worshiping you. Verse 3, then the king's servants, which were in the king's gate, said unto Mordecai, why transgress you the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matters would stand, for he had told them that he was a Yahudim. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath. So Haman, again, is of the Edomites, because Agag is of Edom, Esau. They already hate us. So the fact that we not bowing down and we in captivity, he's upset. How dare you? Verse 6, and he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Yahudim that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. So this Edomite, because he mad that Mordecai, the Yahudim or Jew, was not bowing down to this Edomite, he want to kill all of us in all the realms. So you got to understand, this is the Persian time of the Persians. They had control of the world pretty much. So that means in all the places of our captivity, in this Persian captivity, we would have been killed. Verse 7, in the first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pure, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is the month Adar. So this is where Purim comes from. So Haman is casting pure, and let's see what pure is. Pure is where Purim comes from. So if we look up the word Purim, it's H6332. So let's pull it up. H6332. Let me change it and go to the Strongs. All right, so they cast lots. All right, so we're at verse 7. So in the first month, that is the month Nisan. Notice YAH called it Abib, but now that we in captivity, we're getting these funny words. these Syrian words, these Persian words like Nisan, and then Adar, which none of these are Hebrew words. So again, Ahasuerus, they cast pur. So pur, pure, is a lot. So they're literally casting lots, trying to decide what they want to do with the children of Israel. So that's where the theme Purim came from them casting lots. Verse 8, and Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there's a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of your kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people. Neither keep they the king's law, therefore it's not for the king's profit to suffer them. So who does that sound like? A certain people scattered abroad to this day, dispersed among the people in all the provinces of the kingdoms of whoever's in control to this day, and our laws diverse from all people. That's the Hebrews, that's us. Verse 9, if it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed. I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business to bring it to the king's treasuries. Wow. So they're paying, they put money on the head of Hebrews. Verse 10, and the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Yahudim's enemy. So they letting you know, they record this in history. They know this is our enemy. Verse 11, and the king said unto Haman, the silver is given to you, the people also, to do with them as it seems good to you. Then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month. And there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province, according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus was it written and sealed with the king's ring. So this is all going down on the 13th day of the first month. This is right before Pesach. Pesach is the 14th and the 15th for Pesach and unleavened bread. So they're passing a law to basically be off with the Yahudim right around our Passover. Interesting. And this is what the letter was. And the letters were sent by post unto all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Yahudim, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. So, excuse me. So this is the 12th month. On the 13th day of the 12th month, this is passed. So this is not the first month, which confused me because verse 12 says, then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month. So I guess they were called on that day. But by the time all the letters got out, we're all the way down to the 13th day of the 12th month. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, that they should be ready against that day. So what do you think happens when somebody got a problem with you? They dislike you, they hate you, and then now all of a sudden your enemies are rising up against you and trying to kill you. They gonna jump in because they already had a problem with you. So all our enemies, everybody that was jealous of us, all those people that did the crafty counsel to cut us off as a nation, rose their head, whereas they would need us in past times for our skill set, for our money, for our leadership, for our swagger, our culture, everything. They need that. But as soon as the enemy comes against us, they're going to show you whose side they on. So now in every province, so this wasn't just, oh, we had problems with the Persians. Well, everywhere where we were in Africa, because he was all the way down into the Nubians, the Persians, Xerxes. So whether you're in Asia, whether you're in the different parts of Europe, this was all controlled by the Persians at this time. And there was a letter sent out on the 13th day of the 12th month, which would be this week, which would be around Thursday, I believe, of this week would be the 13th of the 12th month. to kill all your people. So imagine that. You got problems with your brother because you mad because he owe you $15. And the next day they got a decree to kill everybody that look like you, that believe what you believe. That make you come together with your brother then, huh? Now you see who your real enemies are while you're fighting amongst your house when you have things like this happen. So let's go to chapter 4. When Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes and went into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and bitter cry, and came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Yahudim, and fasting and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. So this is a national tragedy. This is not something that's just affecting one of us. This is affecting the whole nation. They trying to kill us. And don't be surprised before we leave out of here that there's going to be the same type of decree. Jacob's trouble. When the world find out who you are and has to make a choice between the adversary, the devil, who's convincing them that he can win, or YAH, which means humble yourself to YAH's order. Humble yourself to the children of Israel, his priests. Verse 4. So Esther's maids and her chamberlains came and told it to her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. Then called Hadassah for Hatak, one of the king's chamberlains, who he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. So Hatak went forth to Mordecai unto the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Yahudim to destroy them. Also, he gave him the copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, to show it unto Hadassah, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king to make supplication unto him, and to make requests before him for the people. So if you're not familiar with Esther or Sister Hadassah, Hadassah was a queen. She was an Israelite, but she wasn't really, identifying as an Israelite. She was kind of passing as a Persian and was married, or, just flew under the radar that she was an Israelite. But either way, she was married to the king. But this could cost her life if you would step to the king without being called and approached. That's how things were in the East. It was an order. Verse 9. And Hatak came and told Esther, Hadassah, the words of Mordecai. Again, Hadassah spake unto Hatak and gave him commandment unto Mordecai. All the king's servant and the people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his to be put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. So for 30 days, the king hasn't even called the queen to him. She can't just come to him. And if she do, unless the king waves his scepter over her, it's death penalty. So this is not an easy feat for her to be in, because her life is at threat if she decides to take this to the king without being called. But yet her people are about to be slaughtered. So she got a choice between her safety and the existence of her nation. What a interesting position to be in. Verse 12. And they told to Mordecai Hadassah's words. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Hadassah, think not with yourself that you shall escape in the king's house more than all the Yahudim. For if you altogether hold your peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Yahudim from another place. But you and your father's house shall be destroyed. And who knows whether you are come to the kingdom for such a time as this. So this is what we have to remember as servants. You're not going to blackmail Yah just because you in a position to do for your people and you an Israelite, that Yah he got to deal with you. No, he don't. Because Yah's word is not a lie. We finna be a nation. We finna be glorious again. There's no going around that, with or without you. But if you decide not to do your part, guess what? You'll be ejected from the body and somebody else will do it. Why do you think you're in a position to do good? That's why it says it is a sin to know to do good and not to do it. Because why do you think you're in that position? Why does the body move itself into certain positions, or certain cells move and blood moves and your muscles move to certain positions? For a reason. So we have to start thinking like the body and understand you were in a position for a reason. You got great eyesight and you out front in front of your people for a reason. Possibly to be a watchman, to see what's ahead of you. Verse 15. Then Hadassah bade them return Mordecai this answer. Go gather together all the Yahudim that are present in Shushan, and fast you for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go unto the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish. So this is a serious fast right here. So when you see in verse 16, she's saying, fast for me, right? So fast could be not eating. But she said, no, neither eat nor drink, not just for the day and the night. So this is a very detailed fast, telling you there's different types of fasts. But this one is a total fast, night and day. No food, no drink, 3 days. Verse 17. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Hadassah had commanded him. So this is what we do in a time of tribulation. We fast. Naturally, we do that. When you lose a loved one, or you get hurt emotionally, or go through something very rough, or somebody close to you gets hurt, you don't want to eat. You naturally fast. Let's go to chapter 5. Hadassah, Esther, chapter 5 and verse 1. Now it came to pass on the 3rd day that Hadassah put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the gate of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Hadassah the queen standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Hadassah the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Hadassah drew near and touched the top of his scepter. Then said the king unto her, what will you, Queen Hadassah? And what is your request? It shall be even given to you to the half of the kingdom. And Hadassah answered, if it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. Then the king said, cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Hadassah has said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Hadassah had prepared. And the king said unto Hadassah at the banquet of wine, what is your petition? And it shall be granted you. And what is your request? Even to the half of the kingdom it shall be performed. Then answered Hadassah and said, my petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king has said. Then went Haman forth that day joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up, nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself. And when he came home, he sent and called for his friends, and Zerush and Zeresh his wife. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches and the multitude of his children and all things wherein the king had promoted him, and how he advanced him above the princes and servants of the king. Haman said, moreover, yea, Hadassah the queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared, but myself, and tomorrow am I invited unto her also with the king. Yet all this avails me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai, the Yahudim, sitting at the king's gate. So this brother is so wicked. He got all these so-called gifts and blessings and family and honor with the king, and he mad because the Yahudim is afflicting himself because of the request to kill off his whole nation, basically. Verse 14, then said Zeresh his wife and all his friends unto him, let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak you unto the king that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go you in merrily with the king unto the banquet, and the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made. So that's a wicked woman right there. That's a Jezebel spirit. So that's what goes with that saying. A wicked woman is a wicked wife is given unto a wicked husband. A wicked woman given unto a wicked man. So vessels for honor, vessels for dishonor. All right, so we're in Hadassah, chapter 6, Esther, chapter 6 and verse 1. On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found, did I skip something? No, I didn't. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on king Ahasuerus. And the king said, what honor and dignity had been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, there is nothing done for him. So it went back to the records of how Mordecai had a good name. He helped save the king. And the king said, who is in the court? Now Haman was coming to the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman stands in the court. And the king said, let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man who the king delighteth to honor? Now Haman thought it his heart, to whom would the king delight to honor more than to himself? So he think he talking about himself. And Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delights to honor, let the royal apparel be brought, which the king uses to wear, and the horse that the king rides upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal, whom the king delights to honor, and to bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor. So he's so full of himself, he think the king trying to honor him, and he think he gonna kill Mordecai. But see what YAH has in store. Then the king said to Haman, make haste, and to take the apparel and the horse, and you have said, and do even to Mordecai the Yahudim that sits at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that you have spoken. So now this man, Haman, this Edomite, he couldn't even enjoy his own blessings because he hate Israel so much. Now he want to hang Israel and find out he's blessing Israel. And he the one that got to do it. And it's going to get worse. Then took Haman the apparel and the horse and arrayed Mordecai and brought him on horseback through the street of the city and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delights to honor. And Mordecai came unto the king's gate, but Haman hasted his house mourning, having his head covered. And Haman told Zeresh his wife and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, if Mordecai be of the seed of the Yahudim, before whom you has begun to fall, you shall not prevail against him, but shall surely fall before him. And while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains and hasted to bring Haman unto the banquet that Hadassah had prepared. Chapter 7 and verse 1. So the king and Haman came to the banquet with Hadassah the queen. And the king said unto Hadassah on the second day at the banquet of wine, what is your petition, Queen Hadassah? And it shall be granted you. And what is your request? And it shall be performed even to the half of the kingdom. Then Hadassah the queen answered and said, if I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Hadassah the queen, who is he, and where is he that does presume in his heart to do so? And Hadassah said, the adversary and the enemy is the wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. So now the tables turned. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Hadassah the queen, for he saw that there was an evil determined against him by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed wherein Hadassah was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in this house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. And Harbonah, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, stands in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. So the same thing he wanted to have to the children of Yasharal, cursed is those who curse you. So you try to curse us as a people, well, we would cease to be a nation. We wouldn't even be here if his plan went through. And now it's turned around on his own head. And all of this originates from Mordecai, because Mordecai did wisdom and did righteousness and did a good deed, even though they were in captivity. He did righteousness, and it affected our whole nation, including his niece, Hadassah. Chapter 8 and verse 1. On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Yahudim enemy, unto Hadassah the queen. And Mordecai came before the king, for Hadassah had told him what he was unto her. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Hadassah set Mordecai over the house of Haman. And Hadassah spake yet again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Yahudim. Then the king held out his golden scepter towards Hadassah. So Hadassah arose and stood before the king, and said, if it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Yahudim, which are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? And this should be natural affection. How can you sit high and mighty, rich, while your people are suffering and there's an order to kill your people? To me, that's like you gonna sit high and mighty in the law enforcement, knowing that this organization known for killing our people, but you getting these $500,000 jobs. But your people getting murdered and targeted. How could you be comfortable with that? Money, lack of understanding who you are. But when you know who you are, you know who your nation is, you suffer for your nation. You glory with your nation. Verse 8. Verse 7. Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Hadassah the queen, and to Mordecai the Yahudim, behold, I have given Hadassah the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Yahudim. Write you also for the Yahudim, as it likes you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring may no man reverse. Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is the month Sivan, and on the 23rd day thereof, and it was written according to all Mordecai commanded unto the Yahudim, and to the lieutenants and the deputies and rulers of the provinces, which are from India unto Ethiopia, 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto every people after their language, and to the Yahudim according to their writing, and according to the language. And he wrote in the king Ahasuerus' name, and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by posts on horseback, and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries, wherein the king granted the Yahudim which were in every city to gather themselves together, and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil them for a prey. So this is what Purim was about. We went from them casting lots of what they were going to do to us now having full sail authority to defend ourselves in all of the places of our captivities, where all the nations that were surrounding us that hated us were trying to kill us. And they had to run them jewels. This is how Yah can turn things around. So he's going to turn things around for us in this captivity, like he did every other one. Verse 12. Upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, the copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Yahudim should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So this looks like the same day they wrote to kill us, they wrote a decree to reverse that. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Yahudim should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the post that rode upon mules and camels went out, being hastened and pressed by the king's commandment, and the decree was given at Shushan the palace. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with the garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. So he went from putting on sackcloth and ashes and wailing for his people to being royally garbed. Verse 16. The Yahudim had light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Yahudim had joy and gladness and a feast and a good day. And many, and pay attention to this last sentence in verse 17. Because of the fear of the get back from the Yahudim, the end of this sentence says, and many of the people of the land became Yahudim, for the fear of the Yahudim fell upon them. This is how you're going to see a lot of Africans and a lot of people all over the world that don't look nothing like us, but they claiming us because they got some of our traditions and some of our cultures and laws and practices. That don't make them Yahudim. That don't make them an Israelite. They were afraid of us. Show me your people being in captivity all over the world. Show me that. Then you can show me you an Israelite. Not you've been in the same place for thousands of years and your people that you just somehow claim to be us. All right, so here's for the conclusion. Hadassah, chapter 9. Esther, chapter 9 and verse 1. Now in the 12th month, that is the month Adar. Again, these are these pagan words. This is a Syrian word. This is not our word. Yah set apart the first month of the year. He called it Abib. Everything else is its relation to Abib. Second from Abib, third from Abib, fourth from Abib, all the way to the 12th from Abib, the 12th month. They called it Adar. On the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution, and the day that the enemies of the Yahudim hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Yahudim had rule over them that hated them, the Yahudim gathered themselves together in the cities throughout all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus to lay hand on such as sought their hurt. And no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all people. Verse 3. And all the rulers of the provinces and the lieutenants and the deputies and the officers of the king helped the Yahudim because of the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. This is our captivity being reversed. Verse 4. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out throughout all the provinces, for the man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. Thus the Yahudim smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughter and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. So the same thing happens when the other nations try to come against us. This is why when Yahushua was leaving, he said, look, I'm leaving now. You about to be amongst the Gentiles. You got 2 coats, trade you one and get a sword, because these Gentiles hate you. They don't want to kill you. So when that time comes again, oh, we'll be ready again, just like we was ready in that time, because this is all Yah's ordination of these things happening. Verse 6. And in Shushan the palace, the Yahudim slew and destroyed 500 men. And Parshandatha and Dalphon and Espatha and Poratha and Adalia and Aridatha and Parmashta and Arisai and Eriday and Vajesatha, the 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hamadatha, the enemy of the Yahudim, slew they, but on the spoil laid they not their hand. On that day, the number of those that were slain in Shushan the palace was brought before the king. And the king said unto Hadassah the queen, the Yahudim have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. And what have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is your petition? And it shall be granted you. Or what is your request further? And it shall be done. Then said Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Yahudim which are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according unto this day's decree, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. And the king commanded it so to be done. And the decree was given as Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. For the Yahudim that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day also of the month Adar, and slew 300 men of Shushan, but on the prey they laid not their hand. But the other Yahudim that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies, and slew of the foes 75,000, but they laid not their hands on the prey. So they slain all the enemies, but they ain't touching none of their stuff. I don't want none of your accursed stuff. Get it up out of here. Verse 17. On the 13th day of the month Adar, and on the 14th day of the same rested they, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. But the Yahudim that were at Shushan assembled together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th thereof, and on the 15th day of the same they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. So you see here clearly those that were outside of the Persian temple, whatever, they kept it 3 days, 13, 14, and the 15th. But then everybody else outside in the other provinces, they kept it on the 13th and the 14th. So again, that's not Yah's holy day. Yah's holy day is static. It's always going to be, Pesach always going to be the 14th and the 15th. Trump is always going to be the first day of the 7th month. Atonement always going to be the 15th, the 10th day of the 7th month. It don't change. But when man makes something up, it can float around. Just like they leap year floats around, and their Jewish holidays float around with the moon, versus Yah's holy days are static. because let it be done on earth as it is in heaven. Yah does not change. But is this our history? Is this our memorial? Yes, you should observe this, memorialize it. This is your culture. You will go to a graduation party. That ain't your culture. You'll go to your friend's birthday party. That ain't your culture. But this is your culture. This is remembering what happened to your people, how you were almost wiped out. And because a woman put her neck on the line, you were saved, your whole nation. Not only the Yahudim, but the other tribes that were also scattered in the other provinces. So can somebody rebuke you for not keeping Purim? Absolutely not. This is not Yah's holy days in Leviticus 23. It's not in Torah, no. But should you? Absolutely. We are getting rid of this American culture and we moving back to our culture. Verse 19, therefore the Yahudim of the villages that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting and a good day and of sending portions to one another. Verse 20, and Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters unto all the Yahudim that were in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, both near and far, to establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month Adar and the 15th day of the same yearly. So the days of Purim, according to this decree, is the 14th day of Adar and the 15th day. That would be Friday, February 24th at sunfall, and Saturday, February 25th at sunfall. So that would be Shabbat and first day. That is the days of Purim. Verse 22, as the days wherein the Yahudim rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, of sending portions one to another and gifts to the poor. So this is what we did. We celebrated. We had joy. We encouraged you to look at how it could look like, man, we the last on earth, man, we getting shot. We getting killed for everything. We making less money. Everything is just horrible. We can't even speak about who we are as a people without them squashing us and blackmailing us and doing all kinds of things. And it could turn from that, from your enemies, the people that hate you, to the next day you on top, on your way to returning to your kingdom. And notice, look at our culture, sending portions to one another. So we giving each other food and little trinkets, right? And gifts to the poor. That is not American culture. Gifts to the poor. This is how we celebrate. So if you want to keep Purim, this is what it includes. Feasting, joy, celebration, portions to one another, and gifts to the poor. That's why they ain't really talking about Purim. They talk about Hanukkah. Right? Because, you know, the Jewish like to talk about that because you got all the 9 days on a 7-branch menorah. I don't know how they got 9, but regardless. But when it comes to gifts to the poor, you're not going to hear about that. Verse 23, and the Yahudim undertook to do as they had begun and as Mordecai had written to them. Because Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all the Yahudim, had devised against the Yahudim to destroy them, and had cast lots, or pure, that is, the lot, to consume them and to destroy them. But when Hadassah came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he devised against the Yahudim, should return upon his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. And trust and believe all these people behind the scene that we don't even know, we can't see, we're not even having access to these type of people that are making all these plans to kill us. It's not going to work. No weapon formed against us will prosper. And what they thought to happen to us, to kill our children and reduce our numbers and cut us off, that's what's going to happen to them. Verse 26. Wherefore they call these days Purim, after the name of pure. So you got some people who have Purim one day. How can it be Purim? Im is plural, lots, right? And then days of Purim. If it's days, that means multiple days. They don't say days of atonement because that's one day. But Purim is 2 days. Therefore, all the words of this letter and of them which they had seen concerning this matter and which had came unto them, the Yahudim ordained and took upon them and upon their seed and upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fail that they would keep these 2 days according to their writing and according to their appointed time every year, and that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, in every city, and that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Yahudim, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed. So the memorial, that's the part. We are the seed. The memorial is not supposed to perish. Verse 29, then Hadassah the queen, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Yahudim wrote with all authority to confirm this second letter of Purim. And he sent the letters unto all the Yahudim to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus with words of peace and truth. To confirm these days of Purim and their times appointed according as Mordecai the Yahudim and Esther the queen had enjoined them, and as they had decreed for themselves and for their seed the matters of the fastings and their cry. And the decree of Hadassah confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book. So there we have it. That is the history of Purim. This is, again, this is our culture. It's our festival, our celebration. It's not YAH's feast day, but YAH definitely is involved. It's obviously a shadow of things to come. They casted lots for Yahweh Shai's garments. You know, the pieces, it was into 12 pieces, all this stuff. This is all symbolic. So this is our culture when we're leaving Christmas and what we just had, Valentine's Day and all this pagan stuff. As we leaving that stuff behind, we supposed to pick back up our things. But what we're not supposed to be is trying to attack one another, thinking you holier than somebody because you know a little bit more about our culture. So let's get into this. Let's investigate this more. Let's celebrate all the things that are pertaining to us, and let's enjoy those days. So that's all we're going to do today. And shalom, shalom. Good shalom to my brother Yafi Yehuda. Good to see you, family. And as always, shalom, shalom to Andrew Lewis Shivers. Good to see you, fam. So again, we are Savior Word of Yah, Tabernacles of the congregation of Yisrael. Oh, thy kingdom come. Join us for our Bible study, our Shabbat study, which will be at 2 p.m. with the elders. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us. You can email us at saviorwordofyahatl@gmail.com. If you'd like to donate, you can donate directly off the YouTube site with the donate button, or you can go to our website at saviorwordofyah.org and hit the donate. And if Yah puts that in your heart, you may do so. So Yah's will, we'll see you for Shabbat, and be safe, everybody, and hold on to your culture. Shalom.